One of the most sought-after experiences for wildlife and nature enthusiasts, the Great Migration is the ever-moving circular migration of over 1 million animals across the Serengeti Mara ecosystem. The constant movement of columns of wildebeest, joined by a host of companions, follow an age-old route in search of grazing and water. After calving in the southern part of Tanzania's Serengeti near the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, the animals journey through the Serengeti up and around in a clockwise direction towards the Masai Mara in Kenya, before returning once again near the end of the year. Along the way, high drama is always present, as thousands of animals are taken by predators and thousands more are born, replenishing the numbers and sustaining the circle of life. The Great Migration is the largest herd movement of animals on the planet. In fact, with up to 1,000 animals per square kilometer, the great columns of wildebeest can be seen from space. The numbers are astonishing: over 1.2 million wildebeest and 300,000 zebra along with topi and other gazelle move in a constant cycle through the Serengeti Mara ecosystem in search of nutritious grass and water. Guided by survival instinct, each wildebeest will cover 800 to 1,000 kilometers on its individual journey along age-old migration routes. Hungry predators including lion, leopard, cheetah, hyena, wild dog and crocs make sure only the strongest survive in this natural spectacle, also known as the greatest show on Earth. The circuit takes the animals from the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, although not into the crater itself, in the south of the Serengeti in Tanzania, up through the Serengeti and across into the Masai Mara in Kenya and back again. The journey is beset with danger. Young calves are snatched by predators, the slow are brought down by prides of lion, brave beasts break legs on steep river slopes, crocodiles take their share of the stragglers, and the weak and exhausted drown. The three groups of migrant grazers have different grass-eating habits. As one group eats the top of the tallest grass, the next group will eat away some of the medium-height grass, until finally it is almost completely eaten, and the herds move on. This means each group sticks to their own kind with only a small overlap in the distributions. The grasses of the plains have the highest protein content in the whole of the Serengeti, as well as being high in calcium. It is unclear how the wildebeest know which way to go, but it is generally believed that their journey is dictated primarily by their response to the weather. They follow the rains and the growth of new grass. While there is no scientific proof of it, some experts believe that the animals react to lightning and thunderstorms in the distance. It has even been suggested that wildebeest can locate rain more than 50 kilometers away. Around January each year, the migration will be finishing a southward trek, moving along the eastern edge of the Serengeti and into the Ngorongoro Conservation Area. Here the plains are rich in nutritious grass, providing the herds with the best conditions for raising their newborn calves. Although there is no real beginning or end to this migratory circuit, other than birth and death, it seems reasonable to call the wildebeest's birthing season the start of the migration. Around late January or February, the herds occupy the short grass plains that spread over the lower northern slopes of the Ngorongoro crater highlands and around Olduvai Gorge. Some 400,000 calves are born here within a period of 2 to 3 weeks, or nearly 8,000 new calves every day. The abundance of vulnerable young calves means the surrounding predators also spring into action, hunting with ease due to the sheer numbers of wildebeest. Those interested in witnessing calving and the drama of big cats on the hunt should look to Racilia's migration camps in the southern Serengeti, which provide direct access: Olakira, Kamondo and Ubuntu. The Great Migration in April and May. After bearing the young in February and March, around April the wildebeest herds begin to drift northwest toward the fresher grass of the central Serengeti, drawing with them thousands of zebra and smaller groups of antelope. By May, columns of wildebeest stretch for several kilometers as the animals start to congregate by the Moro Kopias, close to Dunia Camp, one of the few camps in the Serengeti that offers migration viewing at this time of year. Mating season begins toward the end of May and male wildebeest battle head-to-head. Throughout the rut, the journey continues at leisure with the wildebeest, zebra and gazelle grazing as they go along. Gradually, the movement gathers momentum and the wildebeest start to mass in the Serengeti's western corridor. At this time of year, Ubuntu Migration Camp will have relocated to follow the migration and provide access to watch the wildebeest cross the Grumeti River. The herds form in huge numbers along the pools and channels of the river, which they have to cross in order to continue on their journey. This may not be as spectacular as the famous Mara crossings, but there are still enough wildebeest to provide the Grumeti crocs with a veritable feast. It is worth noting that May is low season at Ubuntu. Safaris at this time offer great value since there are relatively low numbers of tourists in the Serengeti, yet the wildlife viewings remain excellent. The Great Migration in June and July. During June, the dry season starts with large concentrations of wildebeest in the western Serengeti and on the southern banks of the Grumeti River. Each migrating animal must face the challenge of crossing the crocodile-infested river, the first of many daunting and tense river encounters. As June moves into July, the hundreds of thousands of wildebeest and zebra continue to head north along the western edge of the park toward an even riskier barrier, the Mara River in the north of the Serengeti. These river crossings are arguably one of the most exciting wildlife events on Earth. They usually begin at the onset of high season in July, but timing all depends on nature. The herds will typically be found in the northern Serengeti in the month of July, where access is provided by Asilia's mobile migration camps as well as Sayari Camp, for those looking to indulge just a little bit more. Later in July, those animals that have successfully made it across the Mara River will also be found in the Masai Mara, where guests of Rikero Camp can watch river crossings right from the main deck of the camp on the Kenyan safari. At this time, daily river crossings can be seen at the Mara and Talik rivers, both often central to incredible scenes, the Great Migration in August, September and October. By August, the herds have faced the challenge of crossing the Mara River and are spread throughout the Masai Mara's northern region, with many remaining in the northern Serengeti. In years when the river is in full flow, the panic and confusion of the crossings, combined with waiting predators and surging currents, can cause massive loss of life. But, even in years of relatively gently flowing water, the crocs take their toll, not to mention the lions and other large predators that patrol the banks, ready to ambush any wildebeest that make it to the other side. There is no single crossing. At some spots, there are just a few individuals, while others see a mass of animals moving without break for hours. By September to October, the main chaos has ended and the migrating columns have gradually moved eastward. However, the wildebeest will face the heavy waters of the Mara River once more as they prepare to cross once again for their return journey southward. The Great Migration in November and December. After the East African short rains in late October and early November, the wildebeest moved down from Kenya and into the eastern limits of the Serengeti past Namiri Plains, an area known for outstanding cheetah sightings. By December, they are spread throughout the eastern and southern reaches. In the early months of the new year, the grasses in the deep south of the Serengeti are lush with rain. This draws the herds of wildebeest and hundreds of thousands of zebra and other plains animals. The cycle continues as the calving season starts once again. With our camps positioned all along the migration route, our guests have a high chance of seeing the migration at any time of year. 3 of these are mobile camps that move around the Serengeti throughout the year to ensure guests are in the best possible position to witness the Great Migration in all its glory. These camps are Ubuntu Migration Camp, Commando Migration Camp and Olakira Migration Camp. Also situated in the Serengeti are our permanent safari camps Namiri Plains, Dunia and Sayari. When the migration is in Kenya, Guests can experience this spectacle at Rikero in the Masai Mara, or at Naboisho or in Counter Mara, both of which are nearby in the Mara Naboisho Conservancy. Every year, millions of hooves drum against Africa's plains, raising dust and devouring kilometers as wildebeest, zebra and gazelles trek across the Serengeti and the Masai Mara. Called the Great Migration, their odyssey will lead them from drought to water and good grazing, though the way will be fraught with peril. Crocodiles will claim some migrators as they traverse rivers, battling strong currents and the press of their herds' wet, heaving bodies. Lions, leopards and hyenas will run down the share of prey on the plains. But ultimately, collaboration between the region's two ecosystems will see the herds through danger and ensure their future. Indeed, these ecosystems support more large mammal species than any other place in the world. And they've maintained one of the world's last remaining migrations of large mammals in a relatively unchanged state since the time of the hunter-gatherers. Ecosystems. Beginning in Tanzania's Serengeti National Park and heading north into Kenya's Masai Mara Game Reserve, the Great Migration runs in a clockwise circle and covers around 2,900 kilometers. The never-ending journey goes from the southeast grassland region to the northwest woodlands and back again. The southeast grasslands. The Serengeti's large herbivores must find the right quality and quantity of grass to support their species. Essentially, the ecosystem of the grasslands produces environmental circumstances that cater perfectly for their needs. More specifically, the ecoregion has the appropriate soil, climate and rainfall. The grasslands lie just south of the border between Tanzania and Kenya. Over millions of years, the now dormant volcanic crater of Ngorongoro, the Keramazi volcano and Mount Lengai all deposited volcanic ash in these soils. When mineral-rich volcanic ash mixes with soils, the end product contains nutrients such as phosphates, nitrates, potassium, sodium and calcium, all of which are needed for the healthy growth of plants. Also, the soil of the southeastern plains is a shallow, alkaline and very sandy loam. It overlays a calcareous hardpan that was created by the leaching of lime-rich soil. For the most part, the plains are treeless, given that deep-rooted plants and grasses can't punch through the hardpan. But, the hardpan does allow minerals that would be unavailable in deeper soils to nourish short grasses. These grasses have adapted to the short growing season and heavy grazing of the region. The Serengeti plains have the virtues of volcanic soils, meaning they're extremely mineral-rich and fertile. Their short grasses contain much-needed nutrients such as calcium, nitrogen, zinc and sodium. Consequently, the plains are able to support large populations of grazers, giving them the vast quantity of nutrient-rich grass they need to survive. Climatically, the ecoregion is subtropical and averages maximum temperatures of around 26 degrees Celsius. An important feature of this climate is that it makes the region's rainfall is strongly seasonal, with precipitation peaking during the long rain period between March and May, and the short rains in November and December. By contrast, the dry season, which lasts from June to October, sees the plains become far too dry to sustain the herds. The wet season allows the ecoregion's incredibly fertile soil to produce the quantity of grass the grazers need. The dry season drives the grazers away and gives the plains a chance to rejuvenate ahead of their return. Calving season. The herds gather for calving season in the Serengeti and Ngorongoro conservation areas of northern Tanzania during January and February. The birthing takes place over a 3-week period and will see more than 400,000 calves born some 8 months after mating season. The highest calving rate occurs in February, when an average of 8,000 wildebeest are born each day. Rainfall increases and evaporation decreases as the herds march further away from the crater highlands. This movement leads them to different soils and grassland. The soils become more mature and deeper. The vegetation shifts to medium-height grasses that grow on lime-rich soil, underlain by a softer pan that woody roots can penetrate in places. This type of grass receives fairly heavy grazing during the wet season. Medium grassland then becomes long, 30 centimeters high grassland, with bamboo and bluestem grasses being the dominant types. The soil in this leg of the migration is black cotton and still volcanic in origin. The herds graze these grasses on the way to and from the woodland, choosing shorter, more agreeable species beneath the overstory of tall grass. The grasses here are high in magnesium, which is important for lactating females and the growing young. The rut. By June the rains stop and the drought of Tanzania's dry season drives the herds further north. At this time, individual groups gather into larger herds and the migrating wildebeest enter their mating season, also called the rut. Upwards of 500,000 cows will mate over a 4-week period. The last type of soil migrators encounter before reaching the woodlands is the tall, red-oak grassland, which grows on brown calcareous soil. It has a lighter texture and is better drained than the black cotton variety. The area has a lot of palatable understory grasses, meaning the herds graze moderately here during the dry season. The two rivers. Come July, the herds must wade the Grumeti, the first of two rivers cutting across their path to the woodlands. The Grumeti River is deep in places, particularly if rains have been good. Many animals drown in these waters, having no more to give after weeks spent traveling on ruined limbs and under an unforgiving sun. Some will fall to serrated teeth as crocodiles gorge themselves. Those that survive the water will labor up steep, muddy banks to resume their relentless march, with the constant threat of plains predators dogging their steps. August sees the herds into Kenya and brings the promise of good grazing on the lush plains of the Mara. But first they must flounder in the Mara River's treacherous waters, their flanks once again exposed to ravenous crocodiles. The herds will be far smaller after they cross, having lost hundreds of thousands to starvation, malnutrition, exhaustion, predation and drowning. The Mara's woodlands flourish on the less mineral-rich soils of the ancient granite shield. The area has a higher rainfall and lower evaporation rate than the hotter, drier short grass plains, producing a more robust undergrowth. Also, the soils experience rich weathering and weak leaching, which leads to the buildup of soluble salts, carbonates and bases. The deeper soils support larger tussock grasses. But as grass production increases with the rainfall, forage quality goes in the other direction. This factor drives the herds back to the mineral-rich grasslands during the wet season. Back again, the short rains arrive in November and December, drawing the herds south to the rejuvenated Serengeti plains. More than 90% of the cows are heavily pregnant as the tightly packed herds trek back through wooded country, scattering into widely spaced groups once they reach the open plains. The cycle of life will continue as they graze on fresh, sweet grasses and drink at seasonal waterholes, taking in the continent's goodness ahead of the birthing season. In a short while, new calves will replenish the herds ahead of the next great migration.